What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be going over the brand new Diablo 4 official update via Blizzard, basically adding all the changes that we requested over in the beta via our feedback. So let's go ahead and hop right in. This is going to be kind of like too long. Didn't read. I'm not going to read every single piece of patch notes here, but I'm going to go and give you guys a summary of the stuff that you guys are looking for. So there are some buffs and nerfs for classes as well. So starting right off, I'll post the full post down below in case you guys want to read everything, but starting right off the important stuff. Dungeons. They're actually changing out the layouts of dungeons, and this is really big because basically a lot of people were giving them feedback that you would have to kind of go around certain areas and then you would have to backtrack. So they mentioned specific dungeons in particular that would have this, and they have updated these, although they're going to be updating more than likely the way that the random map generator works, so we don't have to do as much backtracking. But there's another huge bonus here. So inside of dungeons, there's going to be events inside of these. My guess is these events, I didn't specify here, but this would be like any of the cursed chests, some of the shrines that you would have to get like basically a piece to actually put on the shrine, or any shrines that would have like a cursed shrine event, basically other things that would be added into dungeons. And then on top of that, they mentioned that the dungeons are going to be changed a little bit, and it's basically going to be a massive buff in the quality of life department. So to specify what's being changed over here, they're going to be reducing the need to backtrap. Small numbers of traveling monsters will seek out the player to help complete any of the kill all monsters objective. This is a massive win for quality of life, because sometimes there's that one monster. If you play Diablo 2, the Den of Evil, there's always that one guy going around causing problems. So this will really help out with that, because they're going to seek out the player. And then on top of that, there are some objectives where you have to collect the enemas, basically like the monster souls. And now when you collect them, you're going to be gaining extra resource and reduce all active cooldowns by 1 second. So this is going to be massive. And then another nice change over here is the depositing of enemas channel time was reduced from 3 to 0 seconds. So you know how you'd have to deposit some of the stuff and your character would kind of do an animation? It was kind of just a waste of time at the end of the day. I understand for maybe campaigns, or maybe way back in like the 2000s for like MMOs, every MMO had like a channel thing where you'd have to go up to like pick up like, let's say, an herb, and it would have like a little channel bar. I didn't feel like Diablo needed this, so I think this is a fantastic change. Now, there is one channel that still exists when someone's tied up. If you want to rescue them, it's cut down in half. And I think this is a great change overall. I think ideally you'd just be able to use an ability and it would just like cut them down from, being hung or whatever, and it would be instant. But nonetheless, I'll still take this as a win. And then on top of that, the rescue objectives now drop a potion upon completion, so it makes it a little bit easier if you maybe need to refill. And then this is a very, very nice change. While carrying the ancient statue, bloodstone, or mechanical box, or stone carving, you receive a momentum bonus, granting 25% move speed increase to you and your nearby allies. Now, what I'm hoping for them to also change with this, I don't know if any of you guys have played these dungeons where you'd have to pick up multiple stones. One thing that I've found very frustrating is that when you would find a stone, and you go to another room and you find another stone, you can't just pick up both stones. I think what would be a nice change is the ability to just carry both stones, not having to get one stone, walk all the way to the area, drop it off, then walk all the way back, pick up the other stone. But at the end of the day, this is still a very nice buff, giving us extra movement speed. So maybe the new strategy is to pick up the stone, complete basically all of the objectives, then put it in, because there's sometimes multiple objectives, or you can use that to maybe do the events a little bit faster. And on top of that, there are builds where you get bonus damage based off of movement speed, so this could be actually another buff. Now, next up, pedestals have had their channel time reduced to 0 seconds, so another nice change over there. And then returning a portable object to its pedestal now fully restores your health, resource, potion, and resets cooldowns for all nearby players. This could be huge, because you can pop like your ultimate and then just instantly just go ahead and drop your device, get another full set of cooldowns. And on top of that, all doors will now generate a mini-map ping when they are open, so that can be kind of helpful maybe for group play. And then lastly, all structure objectives in dungeons now have additional combat mechanics players must overcome. So this could be in the sense of having a little bit more difficulty to them. But in terms of the dungeon layout, this is just kind of a picture that I had over Reddit. This was basically what kind of sparked, I think, a lot of interest in them changing it. A lot of times, let's say, for example, we use this little like mouse cursor here, and let's say the dungeon would start over here. You'd have to go all the way over here, grab an objective, and then maybe go all the way back over here to turn this in. So hopefully, this will be addressed in the new change up of having to backtrack in the dungeons. But next thing that I want to go over is the classes. So these are going to be buffs and nerfs for certain classes. But starting right off, this is a general one. This one actually is pretty nice. So it makes it so the effects of stun and freeze can be applied to elite monsters twice as long before they become unstoppable. If you guys don't know what unstoppable is, it's a condition in Diablo 4 where they are immune to controlled impairing effects and they break it. It's very, very useful in PvP, obviously being able to stop being, crowd controlled or stunned or dazed. And there's a lot of other wording here, but this is definitely going to be nice because there's certain builds in Diablo 4 where you want to have the enemy in a certain condition. So this is going to be, I would say overall this makes the game easier. And then on top of that, reviewed class skills to confirm that all classes have access to sufficient skills that remove control impairing effects, because if you guys have played Diablo 4 and you get frozen, that is a very big thing. So I guess they're making it so every class has some sort of way to avoid or break stun, so to speak. In Diablo 3, a lot of the movement abilities will actually break out of, let's say, Jailer or other abilities. So I would say this is overall a very nice change. It makes the game more active if you get hit by something versus if you get hit by it, you're just done. I almost kind of liked this though, because it reminded me more of like Diablo 4 when you get hit stunned or you get surrounded by a bunch of enemies, but nonetheless it will definitely make the game easier. And then on top of that, many legendary powers have had their updates to their effectiveness, so this would be a massive buff to a bunch of the legendaries that maybe were kind of lackluster. And on top of that, there was a bunch of legendaries in the beta that didn't actually work properly. They would say like after a set duration you would get this bonus, but some of the bonuses didn't work, so more likely this is going to be changed as well. And then next up over here, so these are the really nice changes. So starting right off with Barbarian. So Barbarian has a flat 10% damage reduction passive that got added. So that's a massive buff to Barbarian, especially when you consider they already have the Fortify mechanic to even further reduce the damage that they take. And then they said some skill passives have had their damage reduction effects reduced to compensate. So there's a buff, but there's also a nerf in some other department. And on top of that, Whirlwind skill now deals more damage and consumes more fury. So a buff and a nerf in, a department. And then the double swing skill enhancement refunds its full fury cost when used on a stunned or knocked down enemy. So maybe there's going to be a build where you're trying to knock down or stun enemies, and then you can get all of your fury back, and you can kind of continue on with a combo. Next up, though, the Druid. I think this is the main class that everyone wanted to see some buffs for. You have the meme 17 damage. Okay, so how did they buff Druid over here? So it says companion skills have now deal heavily increased damage. So I think this is overall a nice change because the minions compared to the Necromancer weren't even near the same numbers. It was almost like they forgot maybe to add another 0. And then on top of that, all of the ultimate skills have had their cooldowns reduced. Now, it didn't say it buffed it. If you guys remember when we were playing, the ultimate skill of the Tornado did like 3 more damage. Literally, it was like 3 more damage than my normal Tornado, and that was the ultimate. Technically, the ultimate did last a little bit longer, but it still only did like 3 more damage than the basic attack. Well, it was technically it was called a core skill on the Druid. So hopefully they can also buff the numerical numbers. I mean, that's a really easy change, right? To add, a percent increase. But on top of that, the usability improvements have been made to Maul and Pulverize. So that's a little change over there. And then using a non-shape-shifting skill will transform a Druid back to their human form. So this is actually pretty big. And why this matters is there are different skills and talents that you can put in the passive tree where every time you swap in between something, you gain some sort of a bonus, whether it's resource, heal, or whatever the case may be. This is actually a pretty nice change to Druid. They didn't specify any numerical changes, but I think with these changes alone, would that make Druid like absolutely on the same par of Necromancer? At least via these notes, I would say this would be the biggest change over here because they said heavily increased. But if you're not buffing up basically the transformation Druid, maybe with some legendaries or uniques, this could definitely change up the game. Maybe they're going to be better with their specialization, but overall, I would say Druid hopefully will be in a much better spot. Now, speaking of in a much better spot, Necromancer, one of the best classes in the beta, is actually getting some nerfs here. So let's talk about the nerfs. So Necromancer summons minions will die more often, requiring players to utilize corpses more often. There's actually a thing on the tree. Most people didn't get it, but you can actually make it so the minions can only take a certain amount of damage, and if you have some sort of mechanic to heal them, maybe this won't be that bad. But then on top of that, many bonuses in the Book of the Dead have had their stats increase. So this is a bonus. More likely this is when you don't have the minions, my guess. And then on top of that, the damage dealt by the corpse explosion skill has been reduced, which is, I kind of expected. If you guys have seen like the Immortal Necromancer, where you can basically spawn corpses as you turn into like a blood mist, and you're just continuously, just massively, just doing insane amounts of damage, and you can't be targeted, and it's just way too powerful. If that doesn't get changed, I mean, the damage dealt by it doesn't matter because you're untargetable. They cannot actually deal any damage to you. You break CC, and it could still be potentially a really good skill. Well, it's a legendary-like aspect. And on top of that, the brightness of the skeletal warriors and mages has been reduced. So this is actually a funny change. This isn't a nerf or a buff. It's just visually, they had this like blue glowing effect. I remember seeing on some of the forums, people were like, it looks like a Diablo 3, skeletal warrior. At the end of the day, it doesn't really change anything in terms of gameplay, but aesthetic-wise, it does definitely look better if it didn't have that little glowy feel, because Diablo 4's aesthetic is definitely much more in the grit and gray department than like bright colors, right? And then on top of that, the Rogue actually got some changes as well. So the upgrades for the Subterfuge skills have had their bonuses increased, so that's a buff. Multiple passive skills have had their bonuses increased, that's a buff. And then all imbuement skills have had their cooldowns increased, so that would be a nerf in the Rogue department. Let me know, guys, how you feel about this. I actually played Rogue the most, and I actually really enjoyed them. The imbuement, specifically the Shadow one, was definitely really strong, but at the end of the day, you can still get a lot of cooldown reduction on Rogue, especially if you are going way past. Obviously, getting cooldown reduction early on in the beta is not too easy, but hopefully in the later stages of the game, it won't be as big of a deal. Next up, though, Sorcerer. So here are the changes with the Sorcerer or Sorceress. So charge bolt damage was increased, and the mana cost to cast has decreased. And then on top of that, they decreased the damage of chain lightning and reduce its effectiveness against bosses. So perhaps maybe if it takes the same amount of like chain, because you can bounce it off of yourself, which made it really, really powerful. So that is actually getting a nerf. And then they decreased the cooldown for the Incinerate skills enchantment bonus. Firewalls will now spawn underneath enemies more frequently when using its enchantment bonus, and then increase the lucky hit chance for the Meteor skills enchantment bonus. So I would say overall there's some buffs, there's some nerfs with those changes. There's some mentions with the UI over here. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I will go over 100% the best change over here. So on the UI, they made it so the move and interact inputs can now be mapped to one button, while the primary attack input is mapped to a secondary button. So to explain this in short, when you would have the ability to have move only bound to something, you could not do a lot of things in the game, specifically like opening up the chest, the doors, any of the interactables that would be required to like pick up an item. It was kind of annoying. So you'd have to basically map your move only, and then something else would be mapped. But now you can actually have them both combined into one. This is a fantastic change, and it really, really helps out. And then on top of that, they changed some of the encounters. Nothing too specific that really matters, because they're changing the Butcher in World Tiers 3 and 4, but we didn't have access to that anyways in the beta, so it doesn't really matter too much. Now, on top of that, they are actually buffing sellers. I'm sure some of you guys were wondering what the heck were the point of sellers. It was also something that I gave some feedback on, but what happens is if you go into these areas, you basically kill a couple monsters, and then that'd be it. So now they increase the chances for a dungeon event to now occur in cellars. I thought this was mostly just used as kind of like achievement to kind of complete the entire map. It didn't really have a point to going in there if you really wanted to basically gear up for your character. But now they will consistently have a reward chest upon completion. So there's actually a point to completing all of these cellars. They fixed a bug where it would like mark them as like complete, but it's not really that big of a deal. And then they fixed an issue where the guaranteed elite monster would be absent. So there's always going to be an elite monster. And on top of that, they will consistently reward a chest, and they're going to increase the chances for a dungeon event to occur inside of cellars. So cellars getting massively buffed. They talk about a little bit of quality of life over here. This was something that was posted where people could basically spam in between canceling an animation, getting more attack speed. So this has been addressed, and the reset dungeon button has been disabled. So basically you couldn't complete certain things in the dungeon and then reset it and do it really, really fast. Basically, it's kind of a nerf in a sense overall to that. And on top of that, they are going to be announcing something different over on a live stream. This is actually happening on April 20th. So in about a week, there's going to be a new thing that's going to be talking about the end game. It's going to have Riker there, and that'll be really cool. And I'll go ahead and cover that as far as all the important information if you guys want to see that. And this is your first time here, make sure you guys are subbed with the bell notification on. But that's going to go wrap it up for the patch notes. I would love to know your thoughts down below. I would say these are very nice changes, but I really want to see more of the end game content. Hopefully that live stream will deliver. But take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.